When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. When we think mental health, more often than not, in our minds, these words are directly linked to illness, mental illness, and planted with a negative connotation. While physical health, more often than not, is processed with much more neutrality. Through sharing, storytelling, and raw conversation, together we can inspire across communities the notion of embracing an alternative, which I have reframed as mental beauty, the next way to see mental health. Take in the beauty, lessons, learnings, and owning that it is as much part of each of our lives as every other aspect of health and wellness. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing clinical social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 4, a woman's single-handed journey, a lawyer, mother, daughter, and everything in between. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. It is with pleasure I introduce you to our guest, Jasmine Daya, who is a lawyer and managing principal of Jasmine Daya & Co., a personal injury firm. She is also a published author of Law Girls Bump in the Road, JD in the Kitchen series. She's a podcaster hosting Law Girl. She's also a blogger and a speaker and has contributed voluntarily in the community. And her most recent entrepreneurial venture, the purchase and the owner of Pravda Vodka Bar in downtown Toronto. And of course, a real estate investor. Hey, Jasmine. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast. And I really want to extend my gratitude for you coming on the show today and taking the time out from your busy schedule and showing your support and taking a stance to help break the barriers of mental stigma.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm really excited for you to be here today, and I'm really excited for the conversation. So, Jasmine, as you know, this podcast is about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And we know that no matter the story, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way, which remains tucked away. And this platform serves in a way to break the barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So we are here, really encouraging people to share and tell what individuals typically have reluctance for unveiling. Okay, Jasmine, are you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's do this. So to start, Jasmine, can you give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story? How would it read?
It would read the same way my first novel reads, which is Law Girls Bump in the Road.
Okay, Law Girls Bump in the Road. That's the name of your book. So can you say a little bit more about what that title means to you?
Sure. So I wrote this book when I was pregnant with my son, and it was not supposed to be a book. it was a journal chronicling what was going on at that point in my life because I found myself pregnant in my last year of law school and I was not able to do everything my friends were doing. And back then, we didn't have Wi-Fi, we didn't have Netflix, we didn't have all this stuff that we have now to amuse ourselves. So
Mm-hmm.
I was writing this journal, and towards the end of my pregnancy and writing
Mm-hmm.
to, amuse myself, chronicle things that were happening, that were entertaining in my life at that point, I realized that, you know what, this needs to be a book one day.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the bump in the road,
Right.
obviously there's two meanings to that, being pregnant and that it really was a bump in my life plan.
So, Jasmine, along with, talking about the bump that you wrote about and experienced in Twofold, what I know about your story is that originally when it was published, there was a pen name that you used. And later on, more recently rather, you had republished it as your own name, and you even changed the cover of your book to your own picture. So, are you able to talk a little bit about what inspired you to start it one way and end it the way you have?
I initially chose to use a pen name, Leah London, to protect
Mm-hmm.
my legal career first and foremost. I had
Mm-hmm.
just started my own firm. And I wanted people to recognize that I still cared very much about my firm, about practicing law, about my clients. And I wanted, therefore, to separate my voice as a chick lit author from that of a lawyer. And so that was the basis for having a pen name. In terms of the community and how I portrayed certain things that happened, or certain things that were said, I felt that enough time had passed that people had gotten over the shock. So I was fine to just put my name on it.
Right. Okay. And so that's how you were able to merge and collide your two worlds. You were in a place where there was more security in everything that you've established, and you've been able to establish your work ethic and what it means to practice as a lawyer, as well as take on other ventures on the side.
Exactly. I thought the first book under my pen name was kind of a soft launch.
Hmm.
And now I've released the real deal.
You've released the real deal. And how does it feel to know that now it's yours? It's not under your pen name. This is you, real deal, all Jasmine Daya.
It feels liberating. It feels fantastic. I am so proud of that story. Not
Hmm.
only the story and that it's out there, but also
Hmm.
the fact that I published a book because I did not have a ghostwriter. Like, I actually wrote this book and had to learn not only about writing a book, but
Hmm.
also editing and layout and publishing and marketing and all these other things.
Right.
And so, from a business perspective, it was also a huge sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, really out of your scope, doing something completely different, and you tackled it quite well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And so, is there any other part of your untold story that is left untold? Any other parts of your story that you think is important to unfold?
I have done a lot of public speaking over the years and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
interviews for various outlets and for various reasons. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing I've never spoken about is
Mm-hmm.
my separation, my divorce, and having a young child
Mm-hmm.
while you're going through a separation and divorce, especially given our cultural background and the community and how divorce and separation are frowned upon and how that impacted my family. So that is something I've never been asked about. It's something I've never talked about. And when you
Mm-hmm.
reached out to me to speak on this podcast, my initial feeling was, well, what can I contribute? And
Right.
when I thought a little bit more, I thought to myself, well, maybe my story will help people realize that no, I haven't had this perfect, flawless life
Mm-hmm.
that some may think I've had because of where they see me today. I too have gone through a lot of issues in life because that is what life is. Life is a culmination of experiences where people will have bumps in the road. And
Right.
you have to figure out how to overcome those bumps. If you don't figure out how to overcome them, you'll just stay in this sort of rut,
Hmm.
which is what I refuse to do. And so the untold story really is about that period of my life 15 years ago
Right.
when, as I said, I had my son. He was about 9 months old, 10 months old when I left my husband, realizing that it really wasn't working. I had my mom and dad who are very involved in our religious community and who are very concerned about what people would say, more so my mom,
Hmm.
and also very concerned because of their upbringing and their beliefs about how would my child be? How would that child of mine be raised in a household without both parents? How would they be okay?
Right.
And then at that point in my life, I went from articling student to first year associate, and I really didn't know what I was doing because nobody knows how to be a lawyer after law school.
Right.
You really learn on the job.
Hmm. Hmm.
I had a very difficult boss who sort of threw me in the deep end, and he had a very old school mentality of sink or swim. And, everything I was enduring in that moment was just so difficult. Also, with my young child, it was my first child. And to raise a young child without a partner and to be sleep deprived and to not be making enough money for his Montessori fees and the rent and the car payment and all of that. And my parents, I grew up in a privileged life, I should say. They
Hmm.
gave me everything that they could. They worked very hard for it,
Hmm.
but this was my burden, this was my issue, these
Hmm.
were things I needed to pay for. So I wasn't going to ask anyone for help, and they didn't even know, how much I was making basically equated to my expenses, if not less than my expenses every month.
Right.
And so that is really the untold story. That situation, that difficulty, when I look back, I don't even know how I endured it. And as I've told you, I look at my
Hmm.
three kids now and I hope they never have to go through that. I don't know how they would go through that. But when you're in it, you don't think about what you're going through, in the sense that you don't think about, wow, this is a lot. You just have to get through it. And I've used the analogy before that either I was going to sink or swim.
Hmm.
And I wasn't going to sink. I couldn't. I had a young child and I had gone through all this school, and I, didn't want to disappoint my family.
Right.
So I had to swim, but I couldn't really swim at that moment. I was just treading water, keeping my head above water until I
Right.
could finally take the steps to swim.
You talk about all these layers, so many aspects of your story, right? So there was like the part about getting the divorce, what I imagine is a young age. We talk about the community values and the impact on what your family values are, and being very clear about the path that you needed to take that might not be the easy road or the one that the people around you would have wanted you to take or would have taken for themselves. But it sounds like you found your strength. And, when you talk about the cultural piece, culturally, that really plays a role firsthand in perception. And, when you were talking about what will people think, right? There's so many ways of answering that question. When a parent asks you what will people think, they might have something else in mind. And the answers could be polar opposites. Was that true for you?
Our community, it's an amazing community. There's so much strength and there's so much help from one another, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also a lot of gossip, like with
Right.
any close knit community.
Mm-hmm.
And what will people think had negative connotations? What are they going to say? What are they going to think? How are we going to face them?
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, I learned at a young age, I think, not to care so much about what other people think
Mm-hmm.
and to care more about what I think and what I want. But I recognize that not everyone's like that, including my own family to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to respect them. This impacted my mom a lot,
Mm-hmm.
worrying about that. I mean, She says she wasn't so worried, but I saw the worry.
Yeah, when you're in the thick of it, you might not realize, like, she might not have realized how much she was consumed by it, but you, from the outside in, could see what she was experiencing. You could witness it.
Exactly. And that weighed on me because I love my mom and I
Of
don't want to
course.
be the cause of pain for her.
Right.
And that's what I felt like. I felt like my life situation that was crumbling, my world was crumbling,
Mm-hmm.
and it was causing her world to crumble, which just added pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, certainly nobody wants to add pain to any parent's world. And clearly you have a solid bond with her and you could recognize what she needed and you tried your best to give it to her. So hats off to you for that. Jasmine, are there any other aspects that you feel how your untold story impacted you having gone through all of this? I mean, I know that you talked a little bit about people not knowing your past, and to some, they may have even envied your success in terms of where you are now. But were there any other impacts that came along?
The situation that I was going through at that point in my life motivated me like nothing ever could to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to succeed because I
Mm-hmm.
needed to make sure that I could take care of my child. I needed to succeed so that I was not going to continue to be a disappointment to my family
Mm-hmm.
because I really felt that way in the moment, that
Mm-hmm.
I just completely let them down. I needed to succeed to prove to myself that I was doing the right thing because a
Right.
lot of people around me were saying to me, "You have everything. Why would you
Right.
leave?" I had a big diamond ring and
Mm-hmm.
I had on the outside the perfect life,
Mm-hmm.
a husband, a child. I had now just finished law school and was starting a legal career. Like, why
Mm-hmm.
would I ruin all of that for what?
Mm-hmm.
But I was doing it for my own happiness.
Mm-hmm.
I married someone that I loved a lot in the
Mm-hmm.
moment at that time in my life. But
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, as we grew, as we evolved as people, we were not on the same wavelength. And I decided to end it sooner rather than later because what I didn't want was a life of regret. We were arguing a
Mm-hmm.
lot. I didn't want my
Right.
son to grow up in a household with two parents arguing, nor did I want my son to feel like we stayed together just because of him, because I feel like I would have done that, like that would have been the situation. So I didn't want any of that. So I needed to prove to myself that I made the right decision. And I decided that I needed to hit the ground running and make all of this work and not look back. I needed to be able to pay the bills too. And so I didn't want to be in that situation either. So when I say
Right.
it motivated me, yes, it motivated me. It motivated me to do more and to do better and to not look back, to only look ahead.
Right. So you really did hit the ground running. And even your adversity, all of the adversity that you talk about, it's very clear in how you've been sharing your story that you made it very clear in your mind that you were not going to stagnate. You were going to keep moving. Whether you could swim or not, you knew you weren't sinking. So even if it meant you had to go into survival mode to tread water, as you say, you treaded water. You did what you needed to do until you could swim.
That's right. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to stop swimming now. Like I just keep going. Like I'm loving it. I feel happy. I feel that doing everything I'm doing not only brings happiness to me, but it enables my kids to see what they can achieve if they try
Mm-hmm.
and if they want it.
Right. And so, with this journey that you're on and the story that you've told today, your untold story, I ask the question of where would you say you are? Are you looking back? Are you in the middle? Or are you just getting started with overcoming or going through this journey of your untold story?
Well, with the untold story, that was 15 years ago, the actual
Mm-hmm.
event. And
Right.
so I'm at the tail end, but it will never be over because I share a child with someone.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
my current husband has said to me, "Oh, well, he'll be 18 soon. Soon we won't have all these issues because
Mm-hmm.
right now my son is 15, and at times there's still issues with who has him at this Christmas? Well, I want him because we're having this, or we're going on this trip, or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
There's, still some bickering that goes on, but I don't think that it will ever end. I haven't told my husband that because he's
Mm-hmm.
hoping about 3 years and it's done.
So he's hoping for an end game.
Yeah, he's looking for that end date. And I'm like, in my head, I don't think so, because I can still see, when my son is in his 20s, that we're
Mm-hmm.
still arguing or discussing with frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you
Exhaustive
know,
dialogue.
yes, exactly. Like who's dropping him to university, and who's invited to the wedding, and who gets to see the child first, and like
Right.
ongoing life
All of those
situations.
firsts, all of the
Yes,
ongoing life's firsts, right?
yes, yes, exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
it won't end, but I try to remind myself that it's worthwhile because I have my son, who is most of the time an amazing child.
That's really, it's just energizing to hear you talk about it from that perspective. It just adds a whole new element to persevering. And I guess, with everything that you have been through, and though you're partly looking back and you are in the middle, maybe in between somewhere, what do you feel has been like a healing signature for you on your journey? Like, clearly, when you were going through it, yes, I understand that you had a lot of love and support, but was there something that helped you get through something, someone, or like a strategy that you used? What seemed to be your go to?
I think the support system from friends and family,
Mm-hmm.
definitely, as well as my career. In terms of friends and family, it wasn't that I needed to be heard and I needed to talk about my issues and I needed
Mm-hmm.
them to give me advice. I don't mean like that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean more them being present, them bringing joy and happiness into my life so that I wasn't consumed by the negatives or whatever issues I was dealing with. The
Right.
happy moments or the conversations with friends, or going to someone's birthday or wedding, or hanging out with my parents on the sofa chatting, whatever the case may be. Just
Mm-hmm.
having those happy moments in life,
Mm-hmm.
and that happens when you have good friends and family. And then the other part was my career. And
Mm-hmm.
over the years, I've had the privilege of serving so many incredible clients through my profession as a lawyer, and knowing that I'm able to help them was also giving me strength, unknowingly at the time. But
Mm-hmm.
it made me realize that I had a purpose, and
Right.
that this gave me something else to focus on, and it helped others. It wasn't all just about me and my world falling apart. No, I had a purpose of helping others. Forget my issues. They were insignificant compared to the issues that these people were dealing with that I needed to help them overcome.
Right. So you had like this combination approach. It seems like it's multifaceted here. You had the energy, what you describe as the energy, the vibe of your family, and bringing that presence into your world, allowing you to stay grounded, right? Allowing you to experience the feel good feelings of happiness and joy, and, feeling the abundance of the people around you and the things around you, and having that gratitude that you could have as a reminder on ongoing. And then you talk about this career and the sense of purpose it gave you, and that this sense of purpose was perhaps greater than anything else because it allowed you to sort of move forward. It was your fuel. Was it your fuel?
It was, and it still is.
Mm-hmm.
I love working. Like, I don't even feel like I'm working. Like, it's just my life. Like, I just like
Right.
living it.
Yeah,
Like,
just
I get up every day so excited to go to the office.
that's the
Admittedly, I
best.
really wish that there was coffee right beside me instead of me
Mm-hmm.
having to get out of bed to get it. I wish, that. And sometimes there is. Sometimes my husband like will surprise me with some coffee, but but I am excited to live my life because I love everything I'm working on. I'm excited
Mm-hmm.
to get to the office, turn on my computer, listen to the news, figure out what exciting things are going to hit me that day.
Right. Yeah, your zest and passion for life is very clear. And that energy and resilience that you have, it's very inspiring. And I hope it is inspiring for our listeners as well. So On that note, what would you say that you're grateful for since having encountered this part of your life journey, right? This uncovering of this untold story, like all of that you went through with the divorce at the young age and being a single mom and at that one point in your entry point of your legal career and everything else that came with it. What would you say that you're grateful for?
I am grateful that not only that I had all those experiences,
Mm-hmm.
but that I was able to overcome it, because the fact that I could overcome those experiences occurring all at once means that everything else is a piece of cake
Mm-hmm.
in
Right.
life. Like it was so difficult.
Right.
And I felt so helpless. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when you're young, you don't have the same knowledge, the same experience. I had financial strain. I had a young child. I didn't even know how to raise this young child.
Mm-hmm.
I just did not have the knowledge base that I have now. I
Right.
didn't have the confidence that I have now. I didn't have all
Mm-hmm.
these things that come with life experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in a much more weakened position back then. But if I could overcome everything I did in that weakened state, then everything else that hits me
Mm-hmm.
now is nothing. It's simple. I
I mean, your outlook, like I said, is very inspiring. And it seems like your alternative that you would have had was so clear to you, right? Like if you chose the alternative from what you did choose, it wouldn't have kept you in the driver's seat. And you were very clear about it. You know, it sounds like you knew that you needed to continue to grow, that you desired more, that you wanted more, that you worked more. And it seems like there's some gratitude here for not just these experiences, but that you've experienced all of these things and that it's been part of what has made you who you are today. And it didn't matter of what trauma was going on, you had that clarity to keep going forward. And so I hope that it's just as inspiring for our listeners as it has been for me to hear you tell this part.
There's a little bit more that I'll add,
Okay, yes, add.
if you don't mind. But it's,
Absolutely not.
you know, there's something else that I learned early on that has really
Mm-hmm.
helped with me getting to where I am. And that is looking at every situation from the positive perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have this saying that well, it's not my saying, it's a well known saying that I say to myself all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade.
Mm-hmm.
And I strongly believe in that saying. And I say it all the time in my mind. I tell my children all the time, because in life, there is no such thing as a perfect life without issue. In life,
Mm-hmm.
you are going to encounter issues. And the way you approach the issues will determine what your future path looks like. So if you aren't trying to see the positive when you encounter an issue, then you're just going to see the negative and you're not going to overcome the issue. And that's a problem, because that can weigh on a person mentally, could become physically debilitating, mentally debilitating. And so I just try not to dwell on the negative.
Mm-hmm.
And I strongly believe that every situation has a positive, but sometimes it just takes time to see what that is.
Yeah.
And if you're not seeing it, you just have to keep looking, because it's there
Right.
and you will find it as long as you persevere and don't give up.
And you certainly didn't give up, that's for sure. So, Jasmine, you talk about, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, right? This is a saying that we've heard a lot, even as children growing up, right? It's a simple quote, a simple saying, and we've heard it a lot. And that really is something that seems to be a driving force to kind of keep you in check. And so I'm curious about what impact would you say that you have experienced specifically on your mental health as a result of going through everything that you did? Now, clearly, I do see perseverance. I hear the resilience in everything that you've shared as you've had it unfold. Do you remember the toll it took on your mental health?
Yeah, I mean, it was traumatic. Everything
Mm-hmm.
I was going through was traumatic.
Right.
You know, I am not one to cry very often.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll well up if I see a sad movie, but it kind of takes a lot. Or,
Mm-hmm.
maybe if I hear someone's not doing well, they've become sick or someone's passed away, that's going to make me well up. But it takes
Right.
usually something like that. But at that point in my life, when I was dealing with all those issues, I found myself welling up a lot more than I was used to. And I couldn't really understand why this was happening and how to cope, how to deal with it, what to do. And so, as I said, I turned to my family, my friends, and my profession.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what got me through that difficult period of time.
Mm-hmm. And the way you've described in the past about your difficult time, you talk about like the actual separation and divorce and all of that part, and you talk about the mentally draining aspect, right? And then you have mentioned just what your parents had gone through. So it seems like there's just so many things evolving at the same time when you were experiencing all of the mental health toll and all of those aspects. So I guess you endured all this wrath of the divorce and, some of it having to be maybe public or whatnot with the community and the cultural aspects. Would you say that the knee jerk reaction that you've sort of acquired is just something that just helps you bounce back?
Yes, but admittedly, when I go through issues now, they're not the same caliber. Okay. So, in the
Right,
sense that I'm not dealing with a divorce, a young mom with child who doesn't know how to take care of this child, start of my career, like all these issues.
right.
But I do have, issues here and there. Like, for example, when I bought my first commercial property,
Mm-hmm.
I endured a lot of pain. Hours and hours and hours went into that deal. No one will ever know, nor could they know what I endured to get that property, but I wanted it so badly.
You had your eye on the prize.
Yeah, there was no way in hell I was going to take no, which is what I
Mm-hmm.
got the
Mm-hmm.
first time and the second
Mm-hmm.
time from lenders.
Right.
And, there's a whole situation. I mean, part of it was they have ratios with debt to equity and this and that, but part of it
Mm-hmm.
was that they just didn't believe in me, which was
Right.
even more aggravating because I,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what do I need to do to convince you that I can handle this? But I think part of it, when I look back now, that's a whole other topic for our next
Mm-hmm.
interview was I think gender actually played a role. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
if I was a man, would you be asking me these types of questions about how can I handle it? But overall, I haven't had too many issues on the gender front, but that was one of them.
Okay.
But yeah, with respect to this building and the purchase, and it was a big blow. And so when things happen in life, whether it's personal or business, like with the building, with those financing issues I was enduring, when I have those issues, I do have a moment where I just need to decompress and be down and hard on myself. And I kind of self hate, which is not healthy, but I've learned to give myself the evening to do that. So if
Mm-hmm.
I get the news in the day, I'm coming home, I'm putting my sweats on, I'm sitting on my spot on my comfy sofa, and I'm kind of not moving with
Mm-hmm.
that bag of chips and, just being sad about it and being frustrated. And I give myself that time. And the next day, I wake up, I hit the office usually early and figure out, okay, how am I going to turn this around? What can I do to make this situation right? What can
Mm-hmm.
I use from the situation and turn it into a positive?
Right.
So, I mean, it's a coping mechanism, I guess, but it works for me. And it's a short period of time where I give myself that time to just absorb what has happened.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a coping strategy, and it also is very clear to me that it's a sign of resilience. And what I really enjoy hearing and appreciate about what you just said is that you're embracing your feelings. So you experience the situation and you have these thoughts and you have this perhaps intense reaction and, the shock and you have to digest it. But then you embrace the feelings and everything else that comes with it, and you allow yourself that care and that attention. And even if it's self loathing or temporarily shutting people out, you're embracing your feelings and then you proceed to your action plan. So you're acknowledging all of that, you're not dismissing it. And that's a beautiful thing that sometimes is so easy for people to miss. And you basically allow yourself that whole process. And I think that's the knee-jerk reaction that I was talking about before. It's a knee-jerk reaction, but it's a good auto response. And it's really beautiful the way you're able to do it and encompass it in such a natural state now.
Well, I'm glad you think it's beautiful because it's not a pretty sight, let me tell you. It's hard, but I just feel like it's impossible for me to get anywhere other than to just give myself the time. Because, like, if I try to make the situation right, my head is not in the right headspace to do
Hmm.
anything but just sit there and give myself the time.
But giving time is the most important thing, and one of the most important things that's so easily for people to dismiss. When I hear you tell me that you recognize that, yeah, I mean, sometimes the process is going to be ugly. I didn't say everything was going to be, all fancy frills, right? I mean, yeah, your process in the process, it might be hard for people to witness the pain that you're enduring and maybe how you're reacting or what your mannerism is like, but it's temporary. And I think part of you has cultivated this temporary response to actually help you feel and stay present with what you're experiencing so that you can move forward. And then you do.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah. So I'm curious about, what is your key message to the listeners of our show?
My key message has been sort of what I've already said in terms of, life is going to have bumps in the road.
Mm-hmm.
When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And most
Mm-hmm.
importantly, once you have that down, recognize that the
Mm-hmm.
sky is the limit and that
Right.
you can do anything you want to do. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. If you want it, you need to get it.
Right. So if you want it, get it. And so what's the process to get there?
The process to get there is the positive thinking that we've been talking about, which is try to see the positive when life gives you things that you're not happy with. when
Yeah.
something unexpected happens, when it's the bump in the road that life's going to throw at you, the curveballs that life's going to throw
Yeah.
at you need to see the positive and you need to keep going.
And I think that when you talk about the positives, and I also hear you talking a lot about looking at the things that you have control over so that you can stay in control and stay in check. So I find that that's also very key while working your process so that you can feel like you're getting to where you need to go.
Hmm. It's true. I mean, when you have these negative things occur, they don't
Hmm.
have to stay.
Right.
Like, it's all up to you if you want to turn it around or you just want to sit there and dwell on it.
Right. And you've chosen to be all encompassing. Let me experience what I need to experience so that I can go do what I need to do and like to do.
Exactly.
So, Jasmine, what would you say is your game changer inspiration that's close to you that reflects your untold story? I know that you've mentioned a couple of like mantras and like lines that simple lines and quotes that you use, but is there like an inspirational quote, another one, or a book or something that speaks to you that reflects your story and is a game changer in your inspiration to move forward?
I don't believe so. I really think that using these simple philosophies in life have gotten me from the difficulty I endured at
Mm-hmm.
that pivotal point in my life to where I
Mm-hmm.
am today. And they carry me forward and will carry me forward.
So sky is the limit. Keep going. When life throws you lemons, make lemonade, and that's what gets you through. That's excellent.
Yeah.
So, can you tell me about a cause or an organization that has been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to?
I would say education is of key importance to me.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the schools I have gone to personally have played a significant role in laying a foundation for me to grow upon and to get me to where I am today. And
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
try really hard to give back in the sense that my firm, I'm really proud to say, offers
Mm-hmm.
internships to students, and we aren't limiting it. Like most law firms will have students from law school. So summer students,
Right.
articling students, whereas I've even opened the doors to high school students for co-op as well as college students,
Oh, that's neat.
whether they're doing the law clerk program or the
Mm-hmm.
paralegal program. Yeah, it's great. They provide little bit of excitement in the air, a little change in the
Mm-hmm.
atmosphere there.
Mm-hmm.
Me feeling like I have a part in educating them, in helping them grow and determine, where they will end up in their careers. That's great for me. And I think it's great for the people at my firm. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, I haven't been able to do as much in terms of hands on students in the office because of social distancing and other things that we have to deal with right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I'm hoping that once this pandemic passes, that we can have an office full of students again.
I hope so too. I mean, it sounds like you really are inspiring all levels of growth at all levels of education, and you're finding a space for people to show up and provide them equal opportunities. I mean, that speaks volumes.
Well, there's also an issue with students. There's an issue with students that I hope to help in my little way, which is that people can't get jobs without experience,
Right.
and they can't get experience without a job.
So true. Yeah, it's a caveat one way or another.
So it's like a catch 22 situation.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
by being at my office, I feel that they're getting some experience so that they can help them get a job one day.
Right. And again, it speaks volumes because you're looking at things from that framework and you're thinking critically about this for people's future. So, it's very admirable. Absolutely admirable.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Jasmine, how can people connect with you if they would like to, like on a personal level, if they perhaps feel that they needed to connect with you in some way, maybe connected to your story? Is there a way that someone could connect with you and get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got multiple accounts on social media, but the one that they would use for me personally is at Jasmine Daya on Instagram or at Jasmine Daya on LinkedIn. They can also check us out on our website, which is www.jdlawyers.ca. And my email address is there, jasmine@jdlawyers.ca.
Awesome. Jasmine, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for expressing with vulnerability today and allowing the free flow of the raw. I really thank you for being a part of the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast here that we have and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma.
This has been fascinating, not just for you or your listeners, but for me, because this is a topic that I've never been asked to talk about and I've
Hmm.
never had the opportunity to open up about. And I hope that by hearing my story, people will recognize that, yes, I am where I am today, but not, it has not been without issue. Everyone has issues, including me.
And I'm really hopeful that this will help others come forward to tell their story, a story of their own. And of course, Jasmine, you're welcome. Should you know anyone that you think is ready to tell a story, I mean, you can certainly send them our way for sure. We would love to host them on another episode. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.